Welcome back to True Ghost Vault. This is not just another horror compilation. Tonight we descend into the darkest memories of summer, where laughter once echoed through pine trees, and now only silence remains. 5 true stories, 5 forgotten camps. Each one begins with a simple getaway, a campfire, a cabin, a creek, and each one ends with something left behind. Or worse, something that followed them back. A boy returns alone 10 years after his friends vanish. A hidden graveyard beneath the woods whispers old names. A smiling counselor who never blinks or breathes. A bloodstain that refuses to dry. And a ghost story that becomes real the moment it's told. These are not legends. These are warnings. If you ever went to summer camp, you might want to forget what you saw. But some things don't let go. Some stories follow you home. Turn down the lights. Lock the door. This is True Ghost Vault. Story 1. 10 years ago, my friends vanished at Camp Red Pines. I was the only one who came back. 10 years ago, I was 10. 5 kids in Cabin 7 at Camp Red Pines, friends, for one reckless summer. We built forts, told ghost stories, chased fireflies under night skies. We thought we were safe. Then 3 of them vanished. Every summer since, journalists covered it. Search parties scoured the woods. News cameras showed broken branches, footprints leading into nothing. But no bodies, no answers. I was the one who came back. I'm David Miller. 10 years later, I still carry their voices in my head. Mark, Lucy, Ethan. I never speak their names aloud anymore. Every time I do, my heart pounds like it did that night. Tonight, I'm showing you what really happened. How a dare, just one stupid dare, led to doors we weren't meant to open. How that forest swallowed them. How it nearly swallowed me too. Because at Camp Red Pines, the games don't end at sunset. And now 10 years later, I hear them again. I arrived bright-eyed and loud that June morning 10 years ago. Pine-scented breeze, camp flag snapping atop the pavilion, counselors yelling, roll call. Cabin 7, our castle, sat at the forest's edge, 4 bunks, a loft ladder, and a rickety porch that creaked like a grin. First days, canoe races on Lake Vermilion, crafts roasting hot dogs. We were a tight pack. Mark, my older cousin Lucy, who loved the woods, Ethan, obsessed with strange insects, plus me and my new friend Jamie. Jamie, who wasn't supposed to be there, but nobody asked too many questions. We told ghost stories under the stars. Counselor Matt warned about the shadow, then laughed it off. We didn't take it seriously until we did. We made the dare around the fire pit. The sun had dipped behind the hills, and the world went blue. The counselors were packing up marshmallows. It was the last night before our free day, and we wanted something real, something we'd talk about all year. Mark said it first. Let's do the Devil's Path. Ethan scoffed. It's not real. Jamie nodded toward the woods. Then it's not scary. The Devil's Path wasn't on any map, but everyone knew about it. An old logging trail past the creek, barely visible, never cleared. The counselors joked about it, but something in their eyes tightened when they did. We agreed, 5 flashlights, no talking. Walked the path to the broken stone gate, then turned back. First to speak loses. We left around 9:30 p.m. The woods changed instantly. The air thickened. Bugs stopped humming. Even the wind seemed unsure. I was in the back. Mark led tall and confident. Lucy next, her fingers brushing tree trunks. Then Ethan and Jamie, heads turning like satellites. 10 minutes in, something changed. I don't mean the air or the shadows. I mean the silence. A layer lifted, and in its place, whispering, soft, all around. Not words, just syllables, shapes. None of us spoke. We weren't supposed to. Then Then Lucy turned around and mouthed, "Did you hear that?" Mark stopped. His flashlight blinked out, then flared back. Something snapped behind him. Close. Too close. He turned fast. Nothing. But I saw the shape. A person. No taller than us. Pale. Watching from behind a birch. I blinked. Gone. The whispering grew louder, and now it wasn't around us. It was in our ears, like it knew our names. Mark whispered first, "We need to go." He broke the rule. But nobody laughed. We ran. Branches slashed. Roots grabbed at ankles. Jamie screamed just once. I turned and saw Ethan fall. I grabbed him. We didn't look back. Didn't stop until we burst into the light of the mess hall. The counselors looked up. Mark was missing his flashlight. Lucy was shaking. Jamie was silent. And Ethan's shirt was torn, like something had tried to pull him backward. No one asked us what happened. Not really. Matt just looked at the woods and said, "You weren't supposed to go there." The next morning, everything felt quieter. Not peaceful, not calm, just still, like the camp had swallowed its breath. None of us mentioned the woods. None of us dared. Mark was up early whittling a stick outside. Lucy was tying and untying the same knot. Ethan stared at the creek like it might open up and say something. Jamie was missing. His bed was untouched, boots still by the door. No one had seen him since the run back. I asked Counselor Matt. He looked at me too long before answering. "We only have 4 assigned to cabin 7. I blinked, but Jamie, he cut me off. "You, Mark, Lucy, and Ethan. That's it." I went to the sign-in sheet in the lodge. There were 4 names. Jamie wasn't on it. His clipboard was gone. His bunk tag erased. It was like he never existed. That night, I found something. A piece of cloth snagged on the barbed wire near the edge of the Devil's Path. It was Jamie's hoodie, the navy blue one, with the yellow dinosaur on the back. Only now, the dinosaur's head was torn off, and the cloth smelled like creek water. I didn't tell the others, not until Lucy came to me, her face pale, her voice shaking. "I saw him," she whispered, "in the trees, at the edge of the lake." But he didn't have a face. The next morning, Ethan was gone. Ethan was just gone. His bunk was still made, shoes missing, toothbrush gone, but no footprints, no sign of where he'd gone, just silence. Mark searched the mess hall. Lucy checked the bathrooms. I followed the edge of the woods with a sick feeling in my stomach. We never found him, but we found something else. Behind cabin 7, nestled in the brush, was a pile of stones, deliberately arranged. At the top, a crude wooden carving, a small figure, no face, just a hollow, round hole where the head should be. Lucy gasped, "It's him!" Mark frowned. "It's just wood." She pointed at the back of the figure, etched with something sharp, E.T. Ethan's initials. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard its soft footsteps outside, then scratching, not at the door, under the cabin, like something was moving beneath the floor, digging, searching, whispering. Mark finally snapped and flung the door open, flashlight in hand. He stepped onto the porch. "Leave us alone," he shouted into the woods. The wind stopped. Every tree went still. Then, a whisper inches from my ear, though no one was near. "You came back." Mark spun. Who said that? But we were alone. Or supposed to be. The next morning, Mark didn't wake up. His body was gone. His bunk empty. Only his flashlight left on the porch, still flickering. Like it had been dropped mid-step. I was alone. Only Lucy and me left, and she wouldn't speak. She just kept staring into the woods, eyes glassy, whispering to herself. "They're not gone, they're just waiting." Lucy wouldn't speak anymore. She just sat by the window, humming softly, her eyes fixed on the tree line. Sometimes I'd catch her mouthing names. Jamie, Ethan, Mark. Sometimes mine. The counselors didn't notice she was slipping. Or maybe they chose not to. But I saw it. She wasn't here anymore. Not fully. And every night the scratching came back. Deeper now. Like something was crawling closer, just under the surface. Then one night I woke to the door open. Wind blowing. Lucy was gone. I followed her footprints into the woods down the devil's path. The air felt wrong again. Thicker. Older. Like the forest had been holding its breath, and now finally it was exhaling. I followed the path to the stone gate, a place that wasn't supposed to exist. And there she was, Lucy, standing before a ring of trees that bowed inward, unnaturally curved, like fingers forming a cradle. Inside that cradle, Jamie, Ethan, Mark, smiling. But their eyes, hollow, dead. Lucy turned to me. He said you could come too, she whispered, and stepped inside. The trees closed. I screamed, ran, didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was at the ranger station. When they found me, I couldn't speak for hours. I was the only one left. It's been 10 years. 10 years of silence, of nightmares, of hearing my name whispered when I'm alone. The official story says they ran away, got lost, taken by animals maybe. But I know the truth. They didn't run. They were taken by something that lives in those woods. Something old, hungry, patient. It waits for children who break the rules, who steps off the trail, who follows dares past where the light reaches. Every year someone else disappears at Red Pines. They always say it's an accident. But I've seen the pattern, and now after 10 years of silence, I hear them again. At night, calling my name, asking me to come back. And the worst part is sometimes I want to, because the longer I live without them, the more I forget who I really am. Maybe I never came back at all. Maybe I'm still in those woods. Story 2. That summer we found a graveyard behind the creek, and we should have left it alone. 10 years ago I was 11. We were just 6 boys at summer camp. Teddy Mason, Eli, Chris Noah, and me, Ben. A pack of loud, reckless kids who thought we owned the woods. Camp Oak Hollow was our kingdom. Canoes, campfires, secret forts, dares in the dark. Then we found it, a graveyard behind the creek. No headstones, no crosses, just low, uneven mounds scattered through the woods, too neat to be natural, too forgotten to be sacred. They weren't on any map. The counselors never mentioned them, but they were real, and something beneath them heard us. We should have left it alone, but we didn't. We stepped onto the mounds. We laughed, we made jokes, we dared each other to sleep on one. And that night, one of us didn't come back. Now 10 years later, I'm ready to tell you what happened, why I never went back, why I still wake up cold heart racing, hearing voices calling my name from water I haven't seen in a decade, because some things don't stay buried, especially when you invite them out. We tried to forget about the graveyard. We really did. The next morning, Teddy acted like nothing happened. He dragged us to the basketball court. Mason spent the afternoon building rock towers by the creek. Chris talked non-stop about capture the flag. Eli laughed too loud. Noah barely spoke. But I couldn't stop thinking about what we saw. Those mounds, the soft soil, the whisper that said, "Stay." I kept telling myself we imagined it. Just a trick of wind, the creek talking. Until night came, and the forest started whispering again. We were in cabin 5, bunk beds peeling posters, dusty windows that didn't shut right. It was past midnight when I woke up. I didn't know why at first, no sound, no dream. Then I heard it. Shh, just a breath. But it wasn't coming from inside. It was outside. right under the window. I sat up. Eli was awake too. He looked at me across the dark, wide-eyed. "You hear that?" he whispered. We crept to the window and looked out. The trees swayed gently. The camp was quiet. But down by the creek, barely visible in the moonlight, someone was standing in the water, still, too still. I whispered, "Is that Noah?" But Noah was in his bed, and when we turned to check, his bed was empty. We bolted out the door, flashlight shaking in my hand, socks slapping dirt. Eli tripped. Teddy caught him. Mason cursed. We followed the trail past the canoe dock, hearts thudding. And there he was, Noah, standing ankle deep in the creek, eyes closed, arms at his sides, whispering something. I called his name. He didn't move. Not even when I grabbed his shoulder. He was ice cold. Then suddenly his eyes shot open. He looked right at me and said, "They're not sleeping." We pulled him out, ran him back to the cabin, wrapped him in towels, but he kept whispering, "They're listening, under the mounds. They want to come out." That was the last time Noah spoke that summer. The next day, Noah didn't eat, didn't speak. He just sat on the cabin step, staring at the woods across the creek. When we tried to talk to him, he'd flinch like our voices were too loud, like we were disturbing something only he could hear. Teddy wanted to go back. He said we needed to figure it out. He said we couldn't let some creepy dirt piles mess with us. The rest of us didn't want to, but we followed him anyway. Boys are stupid like that. We crossed the creek again, just like before. This time we brought flashlights, a shovel, one of Mason's dumb ideas. "If there's really something buried there," he said, "shouldn't we find out?" Chris didn't say a word. He just stared at the ground, like he could already see what was underneath. We stood around the mound where Noah had poked the cloth. The dirt looked darker now, fresh. Mason pressed the tip of the shovel into it. I whispered, "Don't," but it was already in the ground. He dug once, twice. The soil came up easy. On the third dig, the blade hit something, soft and wet. Mason yanked back. The hole started to bleed. Thick, dark liquid bubbled up from the wound. Not mud, not water. Something darker, something wrong. Eli screamed. Chris stumbled back, and Teddy stepped closer. He leaned down like he could hear something from inside the earth. Then very softly he said, "It's awake." We ran, back across the log bridge, through the trees, past the cabins. None of us spoke, not even Teddy. The hole kept bleeding in my head. That thick black fluid wasn't natural. It smelled like metal and rain, like a storm buried too deep. That night we kept the lights on. Teddy sat by the window with the flashlight on his lap. Eli cried in his sleeping bag. Chris laid awake staring at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, if we heard something whisper, "Stay," the first time, what if this time it wasn't a warning? What if it was a promise? By morning, Teddy was gone, his bed untouched, his shoes still under the frame. But the window was open. Outside, we found one thing, his flashlight, placed neatly in the dirt, pointed toward the woods. We told the counselors. They called his name. They searched the creek, checked the trails. Nothing. Just like Noah. Just like the others. Only 4 of us left now. And that number wouldn't hold. That evening, Chris told us what he'd seen. Not last night, that night. Back at the mounds. He hadn't looked away like the rest of us. He saw something in the dirt. A hand, small, gray, wrinkled like waterlogged skin. It reached up, touched Mason's ankle, then sank again. I asked him why he didn't say anything sooner. He said, "Because if I say it out loud, it might hear me again." That night, Chris vanished. 3 of us left. Me, Eli, Mason. We didn't speak anymore, didn't joke, didn't eat much. Noah still wouldn't leave his bunk, just stared through the window like he was watching something circle the cabin. Then, on the last night before our parents were supposed to pick us up, Mason said he had to go back. I told him no. Eli begged him not to, but he said it wasn't a choice anymore. They called me, he said, and they sound like Teddy. We followed him. We were 11. Of course we followed him. Back across the creek to the mounds. The one we had dug was gone, flattened. No trace of blood or soil. Just undisturbed earth like we had never touched it. And in the center of the clearing, a sixth mound, smaller than the others, fresh, marked with a crooked stick and a muddy shoe Teddy's. Mason stepped toward it. Eli screamed. I held him back, and Mason knelt, placed both hands on the soil, and whispered, I'm sorry. Then he lay down on the mound and didn't get up. I tried to pull him away, but he was already sinking. The soil swallowed him, like water, like it had been waiting. And when it was done, it was just me and Eli again, staring at the empty clearing, listening to the wind that wasn't wind anymore. It was breathing. We never told the truth. The camp shut down 3 years later. The bodies were never found, but I still dream of that place, of mounds moving like they're breathing, of boys I once called brothers whispering through the trees, saying it wasn't our fault, saying we just heard them first. They told me I had PTSD, said I'd made up the stories to cope with losing friends in the woods, that they wandered off, that it was a freak accident. But I know better, because something in that forest heard us. And once you speak near it, it remembers your voice. Sometimes I hear Mason call me from the creek bed outside my apartment. Sometimes the window opens by itself at night. And always, the dreams come back. I'm 11 again, back at Oak Hollow, kneeling at that mound, hearing whispers from under the soil say, you were supposed to stay too, but I didn't. I ran. I left them behind. And every year on the anniversary, I feel the dirt shift under my bed, and I know they haven't stopped waiting. Story 3. The camp counselor wasn't human, and he took them one by one. 10 years ago, I was 10 years old. We were just 5 kids on summer break, me, James, Mark, Peter, and little Danny. Lakewood Camp was our world of canoe races, midnight ghost fires, canoe dipping, and flashlight shadow play. We trusted the counselors, but not all counselors deserve your trust. His name was Mr. Walker, tall, quiet, pale, perfect in that gentle smile, blank-eyed way. He challenged us to trust him during camp tasks. He said nothing about boundaries. Then one by one, they disappeared. Peter on the first night, Mark the second, Danny on a dare, James later. Ethan was the only one who came back. Now 10 years older, I remember. The stiff boardwalk at night, the echo in the cabins, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. Because Mr. Walker wasn't human. And tonight I'm going to tell you how he found us, how he took them, and how he let me go. Warning, some stories are meant to be forgotten. Others are meant to warn you. Everything started the moment we met him. Mr. Walker, counselor number 7, greeted us at the boat dock, uniform. Crisp voice, soft as syrup, hands too pale against the wood of his clipboard. Something about how he watched us skate across the water made my skin tighten. We were a tight group, James, Mark, Peter, Danny, and me, bonded by neighborhood, boosted by summer freedom. That evening he led us to the bunk cabin late, said we'd missed something special, a midnight nature walk. On the boardwalk he turned off the lanterns. Trust your eyes, he whispered. We heard footsteps coming behind us. Mine, furthest in. He said, keep going. The air warped. I blinked and Peter was gone. 1 second he stood next to me. Then, nothing. No shout, no splash. Just me. I turned. My friends stared after me wide-eyed. Mr. Walker's smile flickered. He said, sometimes the woods take the curious. The second one to vanish was Mark. It was the night after Peter disappeared. The counselors told us he'd gone exploring, that the staff was handling it. Mr. Walker stood behind them, arms folded, smiling. Like it didn't matter. I didn't believe him. None of us did, but we didn't leave. We were 10. Where could we go? That night, Mr. Walker suggested a new game, the Midnight Trust Walk. We were supposed to line up outside the cabin, eyes closed, hand on the shoulder in front. He'd guide us through the forest, quietly, carefully, and we'd come back stronger. James whispered, "He's just trying to scare us." Danny giggled. Mark said, "What if we played along?" I didn't want to, but I didn't want to be alone either. So I closed my eyes and we walked. The forest at night is different. Even when you think you know it, the darkness makes every breath louder, every footstep heavier. We moved in a line, me hand on Danny's hoodie, Danny on James, James on Mark, Mark at the front holding Mr. Walker. At least, we thought so. After a while, we realized the sound of footsteps ahead had stopped. James said, "Walker." No answer. Danny whispered, "Where's Mark?" I opened my eyes. The line was broken. Mark was gone. No rustling, no scream, no sign. Just the empty woods around us and a low whisper, "Keep walking." We ran, didn't care where. Branches clawed our legs. The stars spun. When we got back to the cabin, only 3 beds were filled. Mr. Walker showed up an hour later, mud on his boots. He looked at each of us and said, "Thank you for trusting me." And then he turned off the cabin light. Danny didn't take it well. He kept asking where Mark went, whether he'd see Peter again, why Mr. Walker's smile never changed even when kids were missing. But the rest of us, we didn't answer. We were too afraid of what might happen if we did. By the 3rd night, Danny changed. He got quiet, fidgety, started talking to himself, said he could hear Mark calling to him from the woods, that Peter was waiting in the lake. James tried to stop him. I begged him not to go. But Danny said something I'll never forget. "If I don't go, he'll come get me anyway." At midnight, I woke to the sound of the cabin door creaking open. Danny's bed was empty. I grabbed a flashlight. James whispered, "Don't go." But I did. I followed Danny's tracks past the canoes, along the fog-draped lake. There, on the far dock, stood Mr. Walker. And Danny, just feet from him. Danny looked back at me. His face was pale, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he took Mr. Walker's hand and stepped off the dock into the water. No splash, no struggle, just gone. Mr. Walker turned toward me, eyes that didn't reflect the moonlight, smile still painted on his face. He said, "Now you see." I ran. Didn't stop until I was under the cabin bed, shivering. Danny's name was never mentioned again. After Danny vanished, the camp pretended like nothing was wrong. Counselors smiled too wide. Campers were kept busy. No one said their names anymore. Peter, Mark, Danny. Like forgetting them could make it stop. But James remembered, and James didn't sleep. That night, he sat on the bottom bunk knees to chest flashlight off. He said, "He's going to take me next." I tried to tell him it would be okay, but I didn't believe it. We stayed awake together, listened to the trees creak outside. Around 3 a.m., James sat up straighter. "He's out there." I looked through the window. Mr. Walker stood just at the edge of the woods, still, not blinking, watching. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stared. Then James whispered, "He's not out there for you," and walked out the door. I followed. The air was colder than it should have been. James didn't stop. He walked straight toward Mr. Walker, and Mr. Walker opened his arms. Not like a hug, more like a trap. James stepped forward, and just before he vanished between the trees, he looked back at me and smiled. But it wasn't his smile. The next morning, I was alone, 5 boys came to Lakewood Camp that summer. Only I remained. I didn't speak for the rest of that week. Not during roll call. Not during crafts. Not even during the campfire when Mr. Walker stood behind us, hands folded, face lit by flame, like a painting too perfect to be real. The others didn't ask where my friends had gone. They didn't notice I was alone. But Mr. Walker did. Every time I looked up, he was already watching me. On the last day of camp, my parents arrived early. They found me packed, sitting on the steps, eyes hollow. They asked about my friends. I didn't answer. Mr. Walker came over calm as ever. He said they all chose to stay. My mom smiled, not understanding. He handed me my bag and added, "But he made it out." And with that, he turned and walked back toward the woods. But he didn't walk like a person. He glided as if the ground wasn't real under his feet anymore. Like he belonged to something else entirely. I tried to forget. For years, I didn't speak their names, didn't talk about that summer. Until now, because last week I found a photo tucked inside an old notebook. A photo we didn't take, of all 5 of us at camp. And in the background, blurred just barely in frame, Mr. Walker. Except he hadn't aged, not a single day. There's something that still walks those woods, something that wears the face of a man, that smiles too much, moves too smooth, waiting too long. It doesn't hunt, it doesn't chase, it waits for trust. And kids, especially kids, give that trust easily, especially in places like summer camp. I don't know what Mr. Walker really was, but I know what he did. And I know I'm not the last one who'll see him, because places like Lakewood never really close. They just reopen under new names. And he's always there, waiting for new names to learn, new kids to charm, new campers to disappear. Story 4. We thought the blood on the cabin door was a prank, then it started dripping again. 10 years ago, I was 10. My friends Mia, Josh, Tyler, Emma, and I were the friendship circle of Cabin 9 at Cedar Mist Camp. We told ghost stories at night, dared each other to swim in the creek after dark, and promised nothing could scare us. Then we saw it, a smear of dark red across the cabin door, dripping slowly, as if alive. We thought it was a prank, kids with paint, but it wasn't. That blood wouldn't stay dry. It dripped again at midnight, twice. Then a third night right over Emma's name carved in the door. One by one we started disappearing. Faint scratches on the wall, screaming in the woods, and always the door. I'm Aaron Mitchell. Now I'm 21. Tonight I'm telling you what happened behind that red door, why none of us ever spoke of it again, and why the camp still stands. Because sometimes a prank isn't a prank, and sometimes blood remembers. Everything began on day 3 of camp. We reached Cabin 9 just after lunch. Bags tossed bunk beds, examined inside jokes, starting. Sunshine made the cedar boards glow, and every corner smelled like sunscreen and pine. After settling in, Mia dared Emma to carve their names on the door. We were here, summer 2015. With a pocket knife they borrowed, Mia wrote AMJHTBER. 1 hour later, we returned from crafts. There it was, dark red streaked down the door from knob to threshold. At first, we laughed in relief, watercolor gone wrong. But when Emma pressed her finger to a drip, it pulled like thick oil and smelled metallic. We knocked, no answer. Inside beds slept in, no paint cans, nothing out of place. I tried to clean it with a towel. It lifted, then disappeared in a single fresh drop. Someone's messing with us, Josh said. Voice too loud, too shaky. We dismissed it, took a selfie, shrugged, pretended tough. But at night, I kept hearing dripping, slow taunting. That night, around midnight, I woke to 3 soft taps on the cabin wall. My sleep-fogged mind imagined Emily's voice calling Aaron, but no one answered. The 3 taps repeated, each tap followed by a drip. I opened my eyes. Water or blood. Something dark landed on my blanket. In the glow of my flashlight, I saw the drop clinging to the wall by my headboard. Beneath it, wood soaked almost instantly. I jolted awake. Mia crawled over, then froze. Another drop hit near her face. "We are leaving," she whispered. We ran out, barefoot jackets over pajamas. The cabin was silent. Blood on the door stopped dripping. Counselors rushed down, flashlights waving. No signs of foul play. "Bear Mud Gatorade 1 suggested. We nodded. They cleaned the door. I helped scrub. None of it faded. But that night, I dreamed of drip shapes, a figure standing in the door, reaching. By day 5, the camp acted normal again. But we weren't. Especially not me. I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the door every hour. At 2:47 a.m., I found it. My name, Aaron, written in red just below where we'd carved our initials. Not in marker, not paint. In blood. Still wet, fresh. I screamed, woke everyone. Josh said it had to be some sick joke, but Tyler looked sick. "It's marking us," he whispered. I wanted to laugh it off, but then we saw Emma's name struck through, a long slash carved deep. The next day, Emma was gone. She didn't show up for the morning lineup, didn't leave a note. The counselors told us she went home early, but her bag was still under her bunk. Her carved name was bleeding. We watched it drip until lunch. The counselors wouldn't listen, so we stayed outside that night. All of us, sitting on the cold ground with flashlights and sleeping bags, watching the cabin door. At 3:11 a.m., we heard footsteps. Not big ones, small, barefoot. Something moved behind the cabin. Then a knock, soft, rhythmic, 3 times. Mia stood up first. Josh grabbed her. "Don't answer," he hissed. We waited, and the door slowly opened. No wind, no person, just open, like it was inviting us. Inside, only Emma's bed was untouched, and the blood gone, clean, except for a new set of letters beneath the names, "Still hungry." After Emma disappeared, Mia changed. She didn't speak much, didn't eat. She spent hours just staring at the trees behind our cabin like she could hear something we couldn't. Josh said we should pack up and fake being sick, anything to leave early. Tyler started sleeping with a whistle under his pillow. And me, I started marking the time between drips. Midnight, 2:47, 3:11, always the same. Then on day 7 it rained, but inside our cabin, the blood dripped again on the inside of the door. Only this time, it formed a shape, footprints, tiny ones, red and perfect, leading from Mia's bunk and to the woods behind the cabin. She didn't scream. She just looked at them and said, "She wants me to see." Then Mia followed them. We begged her not to. She stepped barefoot onto the soil, into the storm. We followed at a distance, flashlights bouncing. She moved fast, like she knew where to go. Then she disappeared behind the tool shed. We turned the corner, and Mia was gone. Only the prints remained, leading into the woods, fading, bleeding into the soil. We never saw her again. That night, the door bled her name, and this time none of us tried to clean it. We just watched as her name ran, and under it new letters appeared. "You're next." After Mia vanished, only 3 of us remained, me, Josh, and Tyler. We tried to stay awake together, kept the lights on, piled our sleeping bags in the middle of the cabin floor. But sleep still came, and with it the whispers. At first they came from outside the door, then under the bed, then inside our dreams. On the 9th night, Tyler was the first to break. He woke up at 2:47 a.m., sat bolt upright, eyes wide. I asked if he was okay. He said, "It's calling me," and walked out. Josh grabbed my arm. "Don't go after him. That's what it wants." So we waited, flashlights aimed at the door, but he never came back. Only a new message did, scratched into the wood at dawn. One left to bleed. Josh and I made a pact. We'd leave the second the sun rose. No bags, no counselors, just run. But we never got the chance, because Josh disappeared too. I woke up to his blanket, folded neatly, a single red handprint on the window, and the words, "Door opened itself." I was alone, and the door, it wasn't bleeding anymore. It was open, inside, dark, too dark. But I stepped in, because I had to know. The cabin changed, longer, colder, no bunk beds, just walls pulsing with red veins, and a voice, Emma's, maybe Mia's, whispering, "Come home." I ran, screamed until the real cabin returned. The door slammed shut behind me, and I never looked back. The counselors said it was heat stroke, said I imagined the whole thing. They said my friends all got picked up early, but their names never appeared on any records. Their families never came back. And every summer, Cabin 9 is still there, still empty, except it isn't, because sometimes when the wind is still, you can see a fresh smear across the door, still wet, still dripping. Story 5. He told the ghost story as a joke. Now it won't stop following me. 10 years ago, I was 10 years old. A summer at Pine Valley Camp with 4 best friends. Lucas, Mia, Derek, and Sam. Felt like another world. Canoe races at dawn, campfire songs, endless freedom. Until I told a ghost story, just for fun. It was a childish prank, a campfire staple. I teased about the Watcher, a spirit that follows pranksters until it finds its voice. And laughter followed until that night. Now 10 years later, it's still with me. I'm Jonah Parker, and what started as a silly tale became our nightmare first. Lucas vanished, then Mia. Now at midnight, I can hear someone whispering my name through my apartment walls. Because once you joke about a ghost, it knows your voice. Summer dawn at Pine Valley. Early birds canvas tents, kids yawning with excitement. Our group, Jonah, Lucas, his cousin, Mia, Derek. Sam ran to breakfast, chattering about the week. Ahead, night hikes, canoe races, and the best ghost stories. That evening, the campfire lit up the clearing. Counselors lined logs, shadows stretched like claws. I thought I'd impress my friends. "So have you heard of the Watcher?" I asked, leaning forward. They shook their heads, so I told them it followed campers who joked about it. You mocked a ghost, it mocked you back. One by one, over weeks, pranksters would vanish, drifting off between cabins in the woods, sometimes in the lake. Camp history told in whispered rumors. We laughed. It was a good story, a perfectly harmless scare. But over the next day after the campfire, I noticed Lucas looked unsettled. Mia poked me. "That was edgy, Jonah," she whispered. I waved it off. But that night, I felt eyes on me when I walked past the cabins. Nothing in sight, just my shadow. The next morning, Lucas didn't show up for breakfast. At first, we thought he was pulling a prank, trying to scare us. After last night's ghost story, we checked cabin 4 where he was bunking. His bed was made, shoes gone, flashlight missing, but his backpack was still there. So was his watch, something he never took off. I laughed nervously. Okay, he's really committing. But Mia didn't laugh. Neither did Derek. By lunch, the counselors were asking around. By dinner, they said Lucas had probably gone hiking and got turned around. But the woods weren't that big. And we all knew Lucas, he wouldn't just vanish. That night, Sam leaned in close and whispered, "What if your story wasn't just a story?" I wanted to hit him, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then around 2 a.m., I woke up to the cabin door creaking open. Everyone else was asleep. I slipped out of bed, heart pounding. Stepped onto the porch. The night was dead still. Then I heard it, breathing, close, and a voice so faint it felt like it came from inside me. "Jonah." I turned the flashlight on. Nothing, just my own shadow stretched across the trees. But when I stepped back inside, my name was written in dirt across the cabin floor, smudged, like it had been written with a finger. The next day, Mia wouldn't talk to anyone. She sat on the edge of the dock staring at the lake. I brought her a juice box and sat beside her, unsure of what to say. After a long silence, she whispered, "I saw Lucas last night." I blinked. Where she pointed across the lake toward the tree line, standing there, watching. But he didn't wave, didn't move. And his face? She stopped. What about his face? It wasn't right. That night we stayed up. Mia, Sam, Derek, and me. We took shifts watching the cabin door, sleeping in a circle like kids afraid of monsters, which by now we were. Around 1:30 a.m., Mia sat up. "He's here again," she whispered. We all looked out, and in the tree line, barely visible, a silhouette. Same size as Lucas. Still, silent, watching. Derek shouted, "Lucas." No response. The silhouette stepped backward deeper into the trees. Gone. Mia started shaking. He heard me. I shouldn't have said anything. At dawn, Mia was gone. Her sleeping bag, empty. No footprints, no note, no sound. Only one thing left behind. A single muddy fingerprint on the window pane, drawn in a slow spiral. And on her bunk, scratched into the wood. She shouldn't have looked. After Mia disappeared, the camp shut down early. The counselors told our parents there was a water line issue, maybe some illness going around. But Derek, Sam, and I knew better. We were being hunted by something I had named. That night, Sam refused to sleep. He sat in the corner of the cabin, a flashlight pointed at the door. "If it comes," he said, "I'll see it." I told him that wasn't how it worked, but I didn't know what else to say. At 3:07 a.m., I woke to silence. The kind of silence that means something is waiting. Sam was gone. The flashlight lay on the floor bulb, still flickering. And on the inside of the door, something had been scratched in from the outside. "Your turn, Jonah." I ran, out of the cabin, down the hill, past the mess hall, straight to the clearing where I told the story in the first place. And there, standing beneath the same dead tree, was Lucas, or something wearing him, his head tilted at an impossible angle, eyes wide, jaw slack. He raised one hand and pointed at me. And then, from all around me, whispers rose. "Tell the story again. Tell it again. Let us in." I screamed, and then I did. I told the story, word for word, voice shaking. And as I spoke one by one, they disappeared. The whispers fell silent. The clearing emptied, and I was alone. I never saw my friends again. Their names were wiped from the camp roster. Their cabins were reassigned. Their beds were replaced. But I remember, because it follows me now. Everywhere I go, I hear faint breathing when I try to sleep. Sometimes I see muddy footprints outside my window. Sometimes I dream of the dead tree. And the voice says, "You let us out once. You can do it again." So now, I don't tell ghost stories anymore. I tell warnings, because that night at Pine Valley Camp, I made something real, and it never went away. Even now, if you listen closely, you might hear it whisper your name. If you crave more true ghost stories, subscribe to True Ghost Vault now.